Hello, everyone. Welcome to Far From This Word. The topic today is Africans and African leaders don't understand the value of their own products or their own creation. Africans or African leaders don't understand the value or don't recognize the value of their own products or creation. What do I mean by this? An African celebrity would travel miles out of his continent into another continent like the European continent or the American continent to buy gold or jewelry from a merchant over there for thousands of dollars. Well, in fact, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then brandish this jewelry over on the internet because there is obviously the name means something. The name tag means something. Maybe it's Gucci or something. Just that name to show people that he can do it. That kind of thing. But the local gold miner in his neighborhood or his backyard or the local market sells the same gold. In fact, it might still be raw and even has more value in the world market. Now, is it because he doesn't understand what it's about? He doesn't understand the gold or the thing? I don't understand. But the truth is, at the end of the day, most of them do this. The governments of certain nations, like for example, there was an example about Nigeria where the government decided to issue SUVs to most of the authorities. I don't know if it's the National Assembly, but they decided to issue those SUVs to the authorities when they have a car manufacturer in their country where they could promote. Which I mean, they could just go over there and promote this guy's business, even if he's the worst engineer in the world. But if you promote his business and he gets this money yearly, he's going to improve on his manufacturing, his engineering, or whatever. It's hard for Africans, and when I say African leadership, this is what I mean. For if African leadership understood the value or recognizes the value of African products or Africans as they are, they will create structures and rules in place to protect the African local market. And the Agenda 2063 is a document, but it's not in action. We are still dealing in dollars. Remember, we are still dealing in dollars with each other. In fact, the flight ticket from Cameroon to Ghana or from Cameroon to Kenya, you won't believe. So you see, we don't love ourselves. We don't create things to protect ourselves. We don't create anything. In fact, we blame the white man for so many things, but then we don't understand that the envy, the hatred, the jealousy in our own stomach is what is we send each other away. We don't even want to be together in one place. But when most of them travel out of those countries and they're abroad, come and see, bro, sis. But when you go back, what is wrong with you that you don't see bro and sis anymore? In fact, this even goes up to the extent where other leaders don't like Traore. Yes, most leaders hate Traore because they like the status quo. They like enjoying that money, that free money that big corporations throw around. Yeah, they like the status quo where they don't want to get into war with any government. They don't want to disturb the status quo of another government in his country, like the French, controlling your own government. In so much so that, do you know what happens to some of these countries? When you become president, you travel, you take your own private jet as presidential plane, travel to the other country to tell them thank you for you being a president in your own nation, and you call yourself sovereign states. How can you be a sovereign state that you have to go and tell another person thank you for being a president in your own country? How do you love yourself? How do you even understand that your value? How do you even want another person to respect you and see you as a valuable contributor to this ecosystem, to this geopolitics in the world? You are not, because you can barely respect yourself. You hate Traore because Traore sent away all the investors, the miners, all these mining companies and corporations from his company, cleaning up his government. starting from scratch so that he can build and know every nook and cranny, know everything where it is put, so that he can, when the ass is growing, he knows where it is. Hey, go here, there's this. Go there, there's this. Everyone has to be accountable. You hate him for that. In fact, I will go to an extent of saying that when other African nations or African leaders, and especially when the West start creating agenda and propaganda on any African president, know he's doing his job. We can see the examples of Gaddafi. Yes, we can see what is happening in Iran, what happened in Afghanistan. When you're doing your job to protect your people, then the West starts creating propaganda and other African leaders join or stay back. Because what happened with Gaddafi was they said the NATO told them not to get into the plane. Yes, this was said almost 6 or 7 years after they took him out. Why didn't they say it a long time ago? Where did this speech come from? It came from Museveni in Uganda. Why didn't they say this thing since? Why did it just out of a sudden, after how many years, they took him out? We are not together. We are not building to, we don't understand, we don't even understand the value of the next nation that is close to us, how to protect it. Do you know why Russia is fighting America in Ukraine? You are protecting your own. You don't even just protect yourself. You're protecting the brother the stupid brother who doesn't understand what those guys are going to do in your nation. You hate a Traore because he's cutting ties with the Western nonsense to build his own nation from scratch. He doesn't care if he doesn't have the money. But you like the status quo to keep your private jets, your private trips. How do you love yourself and your country is deep in debt? And you are going for trips that cost millions of dollars. In fact, the amount of people that you carry along to these conferences and trips, 40 people, 60 people, 70 people. Why do you need all this convoy to just go for one trip, one conference? And it costs hundreds of thousands of euros and dollars. And yet your country is in debt. Where is that money from? Because presidents, from what I know, most of you don't own any companies. You don't own any investment or stock markets or anything. You don't own it. So it is your salary. And you're on private jets and red button shoes. And you say you understand the value of the products that are created in your own nations. How do you understand the value of products created in your own nations, but then you export the valuable raw materials from your own nations and fight against those who want to create refineries in your nations? We hardly have I don't think, apart from the Dangote refinery that we just know of recent, how many refineries? Please, someone write it down in the comment section. How many refineries do we have in Africa, on the African continent? And in fact, when Dangote tried creating that refinery, go and search and see how many setbacks he had from his own people who don't want him to create. They don't understand the value. You prefer to send the raw material out there and buy it for exorbitant prices. But if he sets a price, you say this price is too high. But you want to buy at a high price from those other people, but you don't want to buy from a high price from your own brother, at a high price from your own brother. I don't understand. You don't want him to make money, but you can give the money to someone else. It's like saying, I better throw the money than to give your own brother. I might not directly agree with privately owned refineries, but creating one is very important in most African nations. In fact, if we can have 6 refineries on the continent, it's important. So that we don't keep sending our raw materials right the other side, then buying it back like we're fools. The chocolate, the cocoa, everything. Are we fools? For how many decades? We have presidents that have been sitting there for 6 decades, 7 decades, and nothing has changed. And we say that we understand the value, our value as Africans, the value of our products, the value of our culture, the value of our contributions to the geopolitics of this world. How do we expect respect from other people if we cannot give ourselves respect? You go to another person's country This is something that just happened, I think, in South Africa. Because Nigerians, I've seen another video where they have done this in another country, where you go and nominate chiefs. Even though from that video I now understand what it is, you're trying to. It's not really chief. It's like a representative of your people in that nation. I mean, most of us have it. We have small groups. We have small WeChat groups and WhatsApp groups for that in most countries when we travel. All the Rwandas in this, in all the Namibians in this. They have those things in most countries, but the way you make those parties and then you say chief. So now this is the thing. The South Africans may have misunderstood what you were doing. But then there's another bad thing about this. When you go to somebody's country, respect their laws. Because you're spoiling it for everybody else. You're spoiling it for even other Nigerians that are just trying to manage and take care of their families and work hard. Respect the laws of the country. So that when they show you love, you also show them love. Because sometimes the news has to twist things every time and say it's xenophobic, but sometimes it's not always xenophobic. It's because of our own hatred of our own people. We refuse to respect laws. The way, if that man, the man in South Africa, the way he knows you love him is when you respect the law and you do your things accordingly. That's love too. That means you love the African, him as an African, you love him too. Because there's insecurity when everything is just running hectare scatter and he doesn't understand anything, and there's a chief, then suddenly they say something he doesn't understand. Is someone coming to take our land again? I mean, people are still under trauma. What do you think? You don't just do things. You go to the right authorities, you tell them that this is what you do, you explain it to them so that they can understand. In conclusion, how do we show that we love our nations? How do we create that value that we have as Africans? How do we create that value that when other people see us, we don't need to say it. They can see the evidence in our legal tender. They can see the evidence in our infrastructures. They can see the evidence in our GDP. They can see the evidence. We don't need to say it. They can just see it. It's there. They can see that the citizens are living up to standards. Our living standards have changed. So what I'm going to say is this. Most African nations, in most African nations, when it's about presidential elections, the presidents in those nations change the electoral laws or they change the constitution so that they can keep being president, especially in Western and Central Africa. This is what they've been doing for a long time. First, how do we get good leaderships in those places? Do we say all the politicians are bad? No, some are good. But if the good ones are scared so much that they cannot fight the bad ones, so we keep getting the bad ones, then we keep staying in the places that we are and we keep being the shithole countries that we are. So if we can have good fighters that are there to fight these constitutional laws that they change momentarily to favor them, then we might be able to also contribute to the insecurities in the countries, help in the businesses that are being disturbed. And by so doing, we might even create an opportunity where young men and women may, with 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 some kind of magnificent smartness and ingenuity, can emerge. And if we can have this kind of smart men and women that will emerge from just handpicking by meritocracy, not just nepotism, we can handpick them, or competitions or stuff, create an opportunity where we can actually meet with smart people, with geniuses, that they can replace the old ones when they retire. Why do I say replace the old ones when they retire? Because, for example, in places like Cameroon, they often go back. They often go back to take retirees and bring them back into the job. When we have young men and women that could still do the job, so sometimes we question the fact that, is it because they don't have an account of those that could replace them, or what? So why don't we have an account of those that could replace them? Instead of bringing 70-year-old men back from retirement, 80-year-old men back from retirement, we can actually look at the people that are smart enough to maintain the constitutions. I think patriotism is when I think patriotism is not sending men and women into war or making us fight each other or creating some kind of war amongst ourselves to keep us stagnant in the place where we are. I think patriotism is creating pathways for and structures that will help everyone in that nation or on the continent to grow and for the living standards to improve. I think that is patriotism. Patriotism is when your president wants everyone to grow and you can see him walking. It's not war that makes a person patriotic. It's not you wearing a uniform that makes you more patriotic than the next person. Patriotism is a love of nation. And when they talk about love for nation, it's in the things that you do, not the things that you say. Because a lot of people have made speeches and have done nothing over the years. Thank you very much. This is far from just words.